It began as a small picnic at the edge of a lonely hill. A few loaves, a handful of fish, and a crowd that stretched beyond sight. By sunset, there were whispers. How could so little feed so many? Yet, every time they broke the bread, it seemed whole again. No one saw the miracle happen, only the result. By the time they realized, the impossible had already occurred. The day had been long enough to wear down the strongest patience. People poured in from villages with names like songs and dust like prayer. They brought their worry and their sickness and their arguments and their hunger, all of it piled on their backs like the bundles they carried. The hill listened, grass bending under the weight of them, and the sky slowly dimmed as if kneeling. He had been speaking for hours in a voice that knew how to rest in silence without losing its power. Children leaned against their mother's knees and fell asleep with lashes like shadows. Men who made their living persuading others fell quiet, surprised to find themselves persuaded. Even the skeptical held still, because sometimes doubt itself wants to be amazed. By late afternoon, hunger woke like a dragon. A restless murmur rolled across the crowd. The practical ones approached his friends with numbers and frowns. "Send them away," they said, trying to sound respectful and failing. "The sun is nearly gone. There's nothing here but empty hands." "Give them something to eat," he answered, as if food grew on breath. They practically laughed thinly. "We have nothing," they said, "unless you count a child's lunch. 5 loaves, 2 fish. Bring it to me." They expected a lesson. They received a secret. The boy hesitated. His hands were small, and his ears burned at being noticed. But he had been watching all day, and something in him, a quiet part that never got to speak, said yes. He offered what he had without covering it with explanation. The basket, warm with the heat of bread that remembered an oven, sat in his palms like a choice. He lifted it. The man took it as if a king had just sent tribute. "Make them sit," he said. His friends glanced at one another, then waved their arms and shouted, arranging the crowd in rough circles. It looked like disorder was learning how to trust. He lifted the bread. He lifted the fish. He lifted his face. He did not perform. He did not conjure. He looked like a man about to bless a simple meal for a family that loved each other. He said words the wind immediately memorized and has been repeating ever since. Then he broke the bread. Something quiet happened. Not flash, not thunder. The piece in his hand did not shrink. The loaf in the basket did not diminish. He broke again, still whole. He broke again, still whole. He handed a piece to one friend with a look that said, "Now you know." He handed another to a second friend, then another to a third, each time the loaf seeming to rearrange itself kindly, refusing to become less. They walked among the circles, careful at first, then grinning like thieves who suddenly realize the house is empty and the night is on their side. They tore and passed, and the rhythm caught the crowd the way a song does. People who had been carefully calculating their bites began to forget math. The first bites were careful, the second was grateful, the third was inevitable. The fish followed the same law. Flakes slid from bone as if eager. Salt gave itself to tongues. Children licked their fingers and laughed at their boldness. An old woman, whose teeth had abandoned her years ago, found herself chewing without pain, tears cutting clean paths down a dusty face. A man who had learned deprivation as a mother tongue ate without hiding the speed of it, and faces everywhere performed the oldest miracle, transformation by relief. "Slow down," someone said to a neighbor gently, and then realized he had said it to himself too, and they both laughed. "Slow down," another echoed behind them, not as a scolding, but as gratitude. No one saw the miracle happen, only the result. A basket that ought to be emptied was not. A plan that should have failed refused to. Fear that should have kept hands closed found itself outnumbered. By full dark, torches sprouted across the hillside like stars dropping down to earth. Stories began the way they always do after good food. "Do you remember? Once, when I was a boy," laughter stitched the circles together. Babies slept with mouths open. The practicals stopped counting because the math would not obey. They collected what remained because that is what you do when abundance has embarrassed your predictions. 12 baskets, heavy with the proof that excess does not mean waste. The boy watched his own basket come back to him, only it wasn't the same basket. It was heavier. It knew something. He touched the bread inside and felt the warm breath of ovens that had never cooled. He touched the fish and felt river water, cold and clean, sliding over his fingers. He laughed without planning to. and the sound leapt into the night and did not come down. "What did he do?" someone asked, which is the human way of saying, "Please tell me that what I saw is allowed." One of his friends, the one with sunburned cheeks and a grin that always arrived a second too late, shrugged. "He thanked," he said. "He broke. He gave. That's all? That's always all." When the crowd finally stood to leave, a strange quiet had replaced the earlier fear. People walked more slowly, as if the ground had become something precious. A few turned back to look at the hill, the way a person glances one last time at the house where they discovered they were welcome. The boy hugged his basket to his chest and felt, for the first time in his life, that his smallness did not disqualify him. He went home under a sky that had begun to fill with stars. His mother, who had been waiting with a worry she refused to show, opened the door just as he reached it. He held up the basket the way a soldier might hold up a captured flag. She laughed the laugh that only mothers learn and pulled him inside. Bread on the table, fish on the table, enough, more than enough. That night, long after the lamps were blown out and the house performed the drumming heartbeat of sleep, the boy lay awake, replaying the lift of hands, the break that did not diminish, and the passing that never ended. He turned the basket over so that the bread spilled into the dark like quiet promises. He did not reach for more. He simply listened to the sound of his breathing and thought, "This is what it feels like when hunger forgets my name." It began as a small picnic at the edge of a lonely hill. A few loaves, a handful of fish, and a crowd that stretched beyond sight. By sunset, there were whispers. How could so little feed so many? No one saw the miracle happen, only the result. By the time they realized, the impossible had already occurred.